Just stopped to reposition the camera. Now you can see we've come quite a ways from where Pickett's charge began, but we have quite a bit to go as well. Now, it's cool out. It's maybe about 50, 55 degrees. I'm wearing a backpack. I have jeans on, a polo shirt, and some comfy sneakers. And I'm not being under fire. Pickett's men, on the other hand, were under direct cannon and rifle fire. Now, at certain points, the dips in the roadway or the dips in the field here offer some protection, but not often. And keep in mind, with artillery, you could kill with what's called indirect fire, whereas the artillery shell comes up over the hill and then still kills you, even though they can't actually see the enemy. Anyway, so I'm going to put the camera back in there before I talk too much. Continue on with our little walking tour of Pickett's charge. Don't know how long this is going to take me. I'm going at a leisurely pace. These guys, Pickett's men, were exhausted from 3 days of battle to begin with. And on this final day, they're trying to have this last desperate attempt to salvage their army, to salvage their country, and what they thought were their rights. But they ran. And I want you to imagine, I'm one person here walking. The Confederate line of Pickett's men was 1.5 miles long, 1.5 miles wide, of soldiers going to the Union positions. Now, that must have been a very impressive sight for the Union troops. Probably a little scary, too. You have a bunch of these guys in gray running at you, using their rebel yell. Maybe being a little scary, but also was kind of sad because they were being decimated. Cannon fire was just absolutely positively just destroying Pickett's men. All right, stand by 1 second, please. I guess the only advantage the Confederates had over me right now was the fact that the fields at that time were fairly dry. This is a muddy mess. This is why spring sometimes for an attacking army can be even worse than winter. You have to move all over this mud, and this isn't even that bad. You can still see grass. Ugh. Don't even want to think about it. there is the memorial to the Pennsylvania men, defending quite literally their home turf. You guys will definitely see pictures of that if you haven't already. Get off the road a little bit into this field where it's a little bit more dry. These are my hiking shoes, so I'm not that worried about screwing them up, but it's a little weird. Although it's not as easy to walk here. I can imagine during the summer when this field was, gosh, this brush and wheat and grass was probably up to a man's chest or taller. Couldn't really see. Kind of interesting. Alright, here's this another stone fence. And guys, remember, these fences are not always here. Or correction, I mean, these fences are actually added, or parts of them taken away. Here, there's a gap so people could walk. There wouldn't be. There'd be all these stone walls and fences that these Confederate troopers would have to go across. And in the meantime, you stop to try to climb them, and what happens? Well, the artillery starts to target you a little more because you're moving very, very slowly. Or Union sharpshooters up on the ridge there could easily attempt to pick you off with their rifles. And remember, this is one of the first wars where rifling was used in great numbers. So the guns they used were much, much more accurate than the muskets of the Revolutionary War days. A tour guide earlier today said that certain trained men with a scope could actually hit a man or a man-shaped target 500 yards out. That's impressive for a rifle today, or a marksman to be able to do today, let alone way back in 1863. Okay, we're going to stop for a second, turn around. We can't even see the monument to Virginia and Robert E. Lee. And this is one of those points where maybe it was a little easier for the Confederates because the artillery couldn't quite see them. Again, they could be hit by indirect fire, but man, I guess at this point you would take any cover you could possibly get. And you see those trees there, that was the target. They called it the copse of trees, or the group of trees, where Pickett ordered his men to go. Now, Lee ordered Pickett's men to go and do this, along with James Longstreet. Everyone knew that this would be a last-ditch effort. It was that wild card that, if it worked, they could have broken through the Union lines, and if not necessarily won the battle, at least made some of the Union troops withdraw, which would certainly have been better than they were doing. However, it definitely took a toll, but more likely than not, you have basically a mile, or almost a mile, of open territory, open ground, with cannon and rifle mortars raining down on you. Not going to work out too well for you. This is why, as I've told your class before, guys, and many other classes, it is always easier in a battle to defend a target or defend an objective than to attack it. I don't know if you can see up there, there's trees, there's also a stone wall, and back of that is a statue of General Meade, who was the head of the Union troops at the time, that's where our target is. Now, as I've been describing, things weren't very good when they were being attacked to begin with from back where we started, and got worse. Around here, we're a couple of 100 yards from the Union lines. This is when things would have become, quite frankly, hell on earth. But they kept coming. They didn't stop. They didn't say, all right, that's enough, let's go home. They kept going because it was their duty. They kept going because it was asked of them. And quite frankly, they did it because they had the utmost respect for their commanders, like George Pickett, James Longstreet, and most of all, Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was considered perhaps one of the best generals in American history. He was a general that was fought over by Lincoln. Lincoln came to ask him and he said, hey, you're the best general we've got. I hope you'll defend the Union. And after much soul searching, Lee said, no, sir, I'm sorry, but my heart belongs to Virginia. So he chose to defend his state rather than his country. Now, I don't know if you guys could see that. All the way there is where we started. We're making fairly good time, but not nearly good a time as when these guys were going across the fields and having to run, because the quicker they got to their objective, the quicker they'd be out of artillery range. Because of course, the Union cannon are not going to rain down fire on their own men. Obviously, we have to walk parallel to this fence for the opening to get by it, but they would have gone directly over. You can kind of see the green part of it. The field is kind of greener than the others, where people have been walking quite a bit. Pennsylvania Monument over there, without a doubt the biggest one at Gettysburg. You could actually go to the top of that and have pictures from that. Don't think I'll be climbing it today after this walk, but one could. Again, more of this lovely mud. Now, after all this, I keep thinking, I still gotta walk back to my car. This is the Emmitsburg Road, and this is where things really start to get bad. And you can see that's not a puddle, that's a drainage thing. Let's see if I can get over here without getting too much on me. Okay, good stuff. Alright. We're going to start to enter the final phase of this charge, going, of course, much slower than they would have. Again, it was just the sheer horror of seeing these men keep coming, being picked off one after the other, but kept on charging. Amazing. This is a testament to their fortitude, and again, their respect for Robert E. Lee, George Pickett, and James Longstreet. It has often been said that the South had the best generals, but the North had all the equipment and the men and the industrialization. It's not too hard to imagine what could have happened if the South had a bigger industrial base or a bigger population. We'd probably still be meeting here on this battlefield, but perhaps talking about this being the place where the South won the war, where the South invaded the North successfully, defeated the Army of the Potomac, and would go on to seize Washington, D.C., where they more than likely would have sued for a peace, became a permanent independent country, and there would have been two American nations on the continent of North America sharing that territory. Some authors and historians who have talked about that said, since these problems were so deep-rooted, even if the South had won the war, and you had a CSA and a USA side by side, we still would not be at peace, where maybe every 15, 20 years, every generation or so, one side or the other might have actually wanted to try to start up the battle again. try to attack each other, or try to argue over one thing or another. So it's kind of a fascinating what-if story that history geeks like me love to think and talk about. I don't know if you can see this, but my feet are sinking in to the mud here quite a bit. But we're almost at our location. And of course, guys, your teacher, who is a Boy Scout, is usually prepared for everything. Except they did not bring a pair of extra socks, which is unfortunate because my feet are soaked all the way through. Take a second to look. Over there is where we started from. You can actually still see the little blue blot of my car, which is an indication of how very, very, very blue it is. Okay, almost there, guys. This big tree, this wall. This is where the wall starts to actually have like a 90-degree angle, where some Confederates actually got through, but pushed back almost immediately. Remember, all along this line, the Confederates were going. Got to the point, folks, where the Union soldiers were just so dumbfounded by these people's resilience that they actually started helping Confederates over the wall. Obviously to be captured. But it's just fascinating to see this. In a minute, when I get here, I'm going to take a break. Maybe have a fruit snack or a granola bar. I'm going to go over and show you the spot where the top-ranking general who's leading this charge, not Pickett, he stayed behind and ordered it and directed it, but a guy named Lewis Armistead died. And so here we are, the angle. This is called the high water mark of the Confederacy, because this is as far as these guys ever got. And here we go.